Peace, safety, destruction. My name is Daniel Vallis from InformedChristians.com, a ministry devoted to discerning current events from a Christian perspective. This is just a watch, not a prediction. What we are covering is mainly things that have already happened, but it does give us an idea of what we can expect in the future as well. It is a watch, not a prediction. I've been overhauling the timeline and a lot of the information in that to make it as easily readable and digestible as possible. I'm still working on that. Lord willing, I may put out a video that goes a little bit more into that. But trying to make it a little more easy to understand and also separate the different amounts of information, because we're covering enemy action, things that enemy's been doing. We've been tracking celestial signs in the heavens. We've been tracking important biblical dates and biblical seasons, time frames, and a number of things and current events too as well that all fit together. And we've been tracking how all this has been pointing to this time period, this season. And we've seen on our radar how things have dramatically increased in activity, particularly on the enemy side of it. But then we also see celestial signs pointing toward this time too as well. We've been looking at the cover a lot with a lot of the symbols that have been pointing to this time and then have been happening in just the past 2 weeks. A lot has been coming together, so the enemy knows something about this time, and so we've been keeping our eye on them. This information about the cover is still developing. I'm still working on it, but some things that we've already seen so far, and we've covered these in our past videos, so definitely you need to watch the other videos in the Situation Room to get a full context of what's been going on over the past few months. We have different breakdowns and reviews of that, and then also some of the almost daily reports of what have been happening in the past 2 weeks. But looking at the cover, I would divide the symbols so far into about 4 different categories. We have anchor events, which point specifically to events that happen on a specific date, so we know the time frame that is pointing toward. For example, the Cricket All-Star Games, the World Rugby Cups, the G20 Summit, and the Days of the Dead, which include Halloween, All Souls Day, Samhain, etc. Those are specific events. And as we've seen in our timeline, all those have been pointing to a very narrow time frame too, just within a few days of each other. So they're pointing to this time that we've been watching for other reasons as well. But then there's also metaphors that have implied meaning, and it means something special to the occult. And that's one thing you have to keep in mind when interpreting it. We can't just go with the vulgar or the base first appearance ideas that come to mind. Most people will jump to conclusions about certain things and they'll say, well, this is what it means. We have to take in mind, what does it mean to them? Sometimes it has different significance to them, and sometimes the first appearance of it may be thrown out there for the distraction. All messages, especially in parables, and that's basically how Satan is using this. He's using this as a parable cue card for his disciples. But messages and symbols, they'll have a primary message, a secondary message, a tertiary message, and usually the primary message is the vulgar. It's the base message that most people jump to conclusions about. They say, oh, this means that. Sometimes we have to do a little bit of digging and go down and explore, what is the secondary message? What is this idea associated with, and why is it important to them? And we did that one study a couple of videos ago on the hat, just looking at the associations with that come most to mind to them when they see that symbol. So we've covered a lot of that. I'm not going to review them here. But then there's also event signals that point to different symbols we could see popping up in the news in events that are not coincidental, because the news stories are so off the wall or so unique that it's obvious that they're pointing and calling to attention that particular subject that they've already highlighted. And again, we've seen a lot of these happen in combination too in this particular time frame, just within 2 weeks. And then we also have the column of to be determined, which we're still tossing around and looking at, and I'm still working on this infographic too as well. And we have some temporary conclusions about some of those, but we're still examining them. Nothing concrete has really come out and nailed that, yes, this is that. So this is what we've been studying and keeping track on. On our timeline, you can see I've put the anchor dates, the Days of the Dead period, when the World Rugby Cup ended, when the Cricket All-Star Game was, and when the G20, and you could see the very narrow time frame that Satan was pointing to way back in January. when they published it. So Satan has been giving his disciples a heads up for many months, telling them a lot is coming together. And we've looked at it in our videos on enemy action, how there's been a whole lot of messaging over the months and weeks pointing toward this particular time. They know something is going to happen around this time. So that's why it also has our attention. And then we also have the prophetic events of biblical significance that we were considering too as well. But you can see just with what we've been tracking, a lot of the patterns that have come to the forefront, it is really accelerating and taking off now. Which also shouldn't surprise us as we see CERN firing up and getting ready to do something that looks like they have high hopes for it too. So we will review this more later at another time. But yesterday we looked at this drum set that was on the cover, and we covered a lot of meaning behind the guitar, what it typically means, the associations with it, the drum, puncturing the skin there. Then we talked about the specific of that particular guitar pointing to the Jubilee and why it does point to the Jubilee. And so that's what that symbol is. So again, that points to this time frame. The 50th Jubilee officially started at the Day of Atonement. So a lot going on here today. But it's interesting, we covered this just yesterday, and it's amazing how the Lord works and brings wisdom and insight and events across my desk. It is amazing to see the Lord working. So just today, I found out even more things connected to this in a sense. We had talked before about the association with David Cameron and the pig, of how it came out in the news that he had put his private parts in the mouth of a dead pig. Made a little scandal over there for a while. And that was in the end of September, around September 21st. So that came out. So not too far away, 2 months away. But then I was reading through the news, and not too long ago, on November 5th, within our time frame that we're looking at, was Guy Fawkes Day in the UK. And one of the things that they do is they have their bonfire night parties. And so this particular group, they made a massive naked effigy of David Cameron and a pig that they were going to burn at Britain's biggest bonfire night party in Lewes. Lewes is colloquially referred to as the bonfire capital of the world, as a town of about 17,000 people hosts one of the UK's most famous November 5th events. Now, David Cameron in this effigy is depicted sitting on a sand throne with swirly decorations up the sides and what appears to be a crab crawling up his leg. But they depict Mr. Cameron shown wearing nothing but Union Jack underpants. And when you consider what we talked about yesterday with what the guitar represents and how it is puncturing the veil there in the circle, it's a picture of a sex act. And then this effigy within the same time frame draws attention to that with this effigy. It's not coincidental. You know, as much as we don't like covering these subjects, the Bible does tell us there is spiritual wickedness in high places. The Bible's just not saying that. The people who pull the strings in this world and major politicians and those with influence and money and power are some of the most wickedest, perverted people in the world. And the Bible tells us that. So we shouldn't be surprised, but it is amazing to see how all these symbols they tied together, and symbols and tells, so that when they see this in the news, Satan's disciples, it further reminds them, oh yeah, that reminds me of the guitar on the cover. Speaking of rock and roll, at the recent events in Paris was the Eagles of Death Metal, and we talked a little bit about them with the lightning bolt on their logo that represents Lucifer. And just looking at their material on their Facebook page, these people are very messed up and deep into the occult too as well. But just the other day came out a news article about the band saying that in memory of the events and whatnot, there's a campaign launched to get the Eagles of Death Metal to the top of the UK singles chart. They want to show solidarity against terrorism and support for peace. And so they're trying to push this one song that this group has made. They made a cover of somebody else's song, a different group called Duran Duran. But the song is called Save a Prayer from this other group. And so there's been a campaign, and the song is climbing in the charts. It's on Amazon. It's interesting to see. But why are they promoting this song? Why is this being promoted and being drawn attention to? Let's find out who is the Duran Duran group who made the original song. And they're a group from the 80s, another metal rock group. But it's interesting, the song Save a Prayer comes from a particular music video that they made. And guess how it starts out? With panpipes. Pan, panic. That's what we've been pointing to, the goat god. Pan, Satan, Lucifer, whatever title you want to pick. But Pan. And of course the music video goes on to this group walking around temples, on high places, visiting temples. There's a lot of occult in the music industry, especially the rock music industry. But Pan, panic, this song associated with Pan has a campaign behind it now, trying to push it up toward the top of the rock music charts in the UK. This is not coincidence either. It's a signal. Panic. They're trying to build panic and push panic in the symbolic sense of who he is, but then it's also a signal that panic is growing in the world, and we've seen that. We've been documenting that particularly. Panic. And you can't go a day without looking in the news as I'm talking about fear and refugees and ISIS and terrorists and plane blowing up and all sorts of things going on in the world. People are jittery. There is fear. There is panic. And that's purposeful. It's being built up. Satan is stirring the pot. He wants people to be agitated and fearful. That's what Pan does. It stirs up fear. So it is interesting with the Paris events, we have started to see a joining of two ideas. The showing solidarity against terrorism and a support for peace. Does this ring any bells from Scripture? Well, to phrase it another way, peace and safety. Peace and safety. And we see the world calling for that now. Safety. We want safety from refugees and Muslims and terrorists and shootings and bombings. We want safety. We need safety. Where can we go for safety? We need presidents and leaders who will give us safety. We need peace. And pushing a peace symbol of all things. We see these two ideas being pushed to the forefront and agitated too as well. You know, Satan wants to push these ideas, and he'll make people crave peace and safety. And he can orchestrate events to where they will crave it and they will do whatever and they will hand over whatever in order so that they can have it. So he's creating the problem, but then he's also going to be bringing the solution. When the Antichrist comes on the scene, he's going to be seen as the answer to all the world's problems. But he won't tell you that he's connected to those who helped make the problems so that you would sign up to him. But peace and safety. This is what the Bible tells us to listen for and look for when this happens. This is a sign. 1 Thessalonians 5:2-3. Yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. The tribulation is just going to happen completely out of the clear blue. It's not going to be a gradual ramp up. It's just going to come out of the clear blue. We covered that in other videos too. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. When they shall say peace and safety. Who's they? When the world is crying out, peace! Where is peace? We need peace. Where is safety? We need safety. When they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh. This is a warning. The Bible tells us plainly, when they shall say this. When you hear this trumpeted in the news and people talking about this in the news and people concerned about this all of a sudden, then guess what's coming next? Sudden destruction. The day of the Lord, the tribulation, the time of judgment and destruction. That is coming right on the heels of when they say this. This is a clue. This is a sign. This is what we as watchmen are watching for, so we can live in light of it. You know, when we see the events in the news and they start crying out for this and plastering the peace symbol all over the place and talking about terrorism and refugees and Muslims and all ISIS and all that, that should set off the red alerts in our mind of that's exactly what the Bible said would happen. Peace and safety. And that clues us in of what's coming next. It's not going to get better, folks. Don't live your life like you have more months and years ahead of you. Like you have a career and education and all that ahead of you. Don't live with the mentality that life goes on. It's not going to get better. The Bible tells us sudden destruction is coming when you hear this. I highly recommend you take time to read our article, Beware the Tribulation Snare. It's the warnings that Jesus Christ gave to his disciples. And there's many warnings that Jesus Christ gave specifically to his disciples because it applied to them. There's warnings he gave to the world, but there's specific warnings regarding the tribulation that Christ gave to his disciples and that we need to pay attention to. He told them that it is going to be a snare. The tribulation will catch those who are not paying attention. So definitely check that article out. The link is in the description box. And the reason he gives that is a warning so that when we do see it, we will live accordingly. We will change our life habits. We will set aside things that we might have been involved in before that were perfectly okay. But now is the time to set aside things, be temperate, be moderate in our actions, and focus on what we should be doing now, knowing that time remaining is very short. When any one of these come up on our radars, that should automatically raise red flags and alerts that, whoa, the Bible warned about this. This means something is coming soon. It's coming. The Bible says it is coming. And when we see the culmination of it, that should automatically invoke the 1 Thessalonians section 5, paragraph 3 clause. Sudden destruction is coming. And that's what a watchman, that's what I'm here to tell you. These are showing up on radar. Peace and safety. Very strong themes of both at the same time that a lot of else is going on too. And so we need to wake up. That's what the Bible tells us. It's high time to wake up. Time is almost out. Sudden destruction is coming. Don't waste your time building and planting and marrying and buying and selling and all the other things that Christ described the days of Noah as. Don't waste your life with that right now. Don't waste your life with politics and focusing on stupid things. That's distractions at this point. It's a mute point. It doesn't matter. Focus on what God wants us to, where we should be. Are our lights burning? Am I where I'm supposed to be in my spiritual walk? Right next to God. Right at His feet, listening to Him. Am I there? Am I where I'm supposed to be? That's the first thing we should be checking. Sudden destruction is coming. Satan knows it's coming too. He's the one who's been agitating it. He's been Pan, the one fanning the flames of fear and panic, pandemonium. You know where we get all those words from? Pan. Yeah, he's been feeding it all because he knows what's coming and he's preparing the world for his plans. In our previous videos, we've been looking at how a lot has been pointing to this time, and we've been even seeing warning signs to expect panic coming. But it is interesting when we look at just what has happened within the past 2 weeks. We see the plane bombing on the 31st, which was Halloween, and then we see the Paris events on the 13th, which was 13 days away from Halloween. But it is interesting that on both of those major days, there was a pan signal. The panda opening up Wall Street on the 13th, and then on the 31st, NASA had given long heads up that their pan stars system had detected that meteorite. So 2 pan signals on those days. Satan is stirring up panic now. It's going to get worse. Sudden destruction is coming, and he's ramping up the world for it. So expect even more panic, more fear, more attacks. Don't let that control you, but just keep that in mind that things are not going to get better. Live in light of how things are changing. We are in perilous times. The word perilous means peril. Fear and safety and concerns about that is going to dramatically take off here very soon. So we've seen a lot of warning signs, and we've definitely seen the themes of safety and peace now being pushed and brought to the forefront. So we should expect sudden destruction is incoming. In our video Enemy Action, we covered going back to January how Satan has been giving a lot of signals of preparing what he's going to be doing, and a lot has been pointing toward this October time period. In our other videos we talked about, even as it's getting closer and closer, he did a lot of push pointing toward this time. And the Days of the Dead, as we saw, kicked off a lot of things. And there's even pre-warning signs of panic. Panic is coming. All this is coming to the world. And now that we're in the thick of it, he's given even more signaling of what the next step is going to entail too. It's going to be much more multiplied. We see the increase in travail going on. It's going to get worse, folks. Don't live for this world. Live for eternity. Live and strive for what matters. Press for what matters. This world, this life as you know it, is about to change. Don't live for it. So what should we do? How should we live in light of it? Well, watch our video, The Letters to the 7 Churches, and it's our Bible study on the letters to the churches in Revelation, where Jesus Christ himself explains to his church, to his believers, this is what I want in your life. This is what I want you to be. This is what I want you to press for. This is what I want you to be. And this is what you should take out of your life. This is what you should put in your life. This is how you can be the best bride that you can be. How you can strive and be victorious. So I highly recommend, please watch the video, The Letters to the 7 Churches. And strive and be zealous to serve God first and highest above all else. Maranatha.